Phil Beach. I believe Mayor Pro Tem Dan Merkel has an appointment.
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. It'd be Derek Keegan.
I believe Councilman Mitchell.
I do, thank you. I'd like to reappoint Brad Bowers.
Thank you. Councilman Hypes.
Yes, I'd like to reappoint Mr. Cameron Klein, who's also out in the audience with many of our other commissioners.
And Councilman Dorito.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to reappoint Carla Piedrahita.
Thank you, gentlemen. So all of those will be reappointed. And now we'll be doing the swearing in of all the recreation members that are present. So if all of you could come down forward, and certainly the appointers on council, if you'd like to join us, feel free to do so. As long as I have a copy. So we found the easiest way is for each of you to have a copy of this as well. I'll read, and then all of you read from the sheet, but insert your names. Okay? Where it says blank. Right. Mine just says state your name. Yours says Cheryl. So, this is the oath of office for the Recreation Board of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia. I state your name, hereby accept the honor of serving as a board member of the Recreation Board of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia.
I, Cheryl Mann, hereby accept the honor of serving as a board member of the Recreation Board of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia.
Well done. You can tell y'all are experienced at this. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I am not the holder of any unaccounted for public money due to this state or any political subdivision or authority thereof. I am qualified to hold said office according to the Constitution and laws of Georgia, and I shall support the Constitution and laws of the state of Georgia and the Constitution and laws of the United States of America.
I do solemnly swear to affirm that I am not the holder of any accounted for public money due to this state or any political subdivision or authority thereof. I am qualified to hold said office according to the Constitution and laws of Georgia, and I shall support the Constitution and laws of the state of Georgia and the Constitution and laws of the United States of America.
Now you may take a breath while I read the next portion, which is, further, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I shall faithfully perform the duties of a recreation board member, regularly attend meetings, uphold the ideals of community and service, act and conduct business in accordance with the city's code of ethics and conduct, and support the charter and laws of the city of Alpharetta.
Further, I do solemnly swear to affirm that I shall faithfully perform the duties of a recreation board member, regularly attend meetings, uphold the ideals of community and service, act and conduct business in accordance with the city's code of ethics and conduct, and support the charter and laws of the city of Alpharetta.
So sworn this 19th day of May, 2025.
So sworn this 19th day of May, 2025.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Now, don't go anywhere. I know Ms. Shapiro needs to get some signatures, and before we do, I'd just like to take a moment to let everyone here know, the city of Alpharetta has been blessed to create a great environment for our businesses and our publics, but most people don't know that we have 450 paid employees in the city of Alpharetta, but we also have hundreds of volunteers that are a big part of what makes Alpharetta the city it is now. And it's people like these that we're swearing in today that serve our community. They get little to no compensation, if anything at all, and they dedicate their time because they believe that this is a community that they can help serve, and that's a big part of what has made our community the city we have today. Everybody signed up?
Pleasure.
So this evening, the next item up is our work session. This is not an item that we'll be voting on or making any decisions. This is just an opportunity for our staff to present the fiscal year 2026 budget and to have discussions to get input from the City Council if they have anything to say. Since we don't have our liaison to finance, we just thought we'd take an opportunity. If any council members have any thoughts at this point, feel free to share them. Mr. Lagerblum?
Yeah, we're absolutely fine with doing that. This was advertised as a workshop. I do want to have the ability to do another one, and so I'll maybe just start this discussion tonight by saying that we changed some of the dates that we have previously published for the budget going into this year. We'll do a budget workshop again on June the 2nd, and then the budget will come forward for its 3 public hearings. One of those will be on June the 16th at 6:30 in the evening, and 2 of them will be on June 23rd, one at 11:30 in the morning and one at 6:30 in the evening. So we're just going to use all 3 meetings in June to have some version of a budget component at it. But because we're advertised correctly tonight, I'll invite our finance director and budget manager to come forward, make probably a briefer presentation than they would have made if we had the full council here. And again, we're sort of, I know nobody's shocked by this, but we don't have a video feed tonight, and therefore we're working on some paper copies. So maybe we'll let Tom do an abbreviated highlight version, and then we're more interested in what the members that are here tonight have to provide as far as feedback, knowing again that you'll have a second workshop on June 2nd.
Thanks, sir. Director Harris, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am going to go through this a little quicker, as we said, because in front of you are the slides, but we aren't able to show it up on the screens here, and not for our listening viewers aren't able to see it either. But just real quick, slide 4 or whatever, we know that we start the budget process pretty early, usually in December, and we work through it. Chris has, again, brought the same approach this year, working with departments and making sure that they have a say-so in along the whole process as far as what they want to include in their initiatives, what they care about their base budget, and we're also informing them of, the revenue constraints and the other things that are going on in the budget. So we were able to produce a budget on May 5th and put it on that's slide 5, on our financial transparency site and the city's website. And so from there, this is our first budget workshop on it. I am going to turn to slide 8, and this is a discussion just basically that the millage rate, just a little history of the millage rate, is still at 5.75, and you'll see in a slide after it's been much longer than the year shown here, but this is just from 2017 through 2026 forecast, that if we leave the millage rate the same at 5.75 mils, we are, because the debt service is level debt, and because we do expect some increase in the property tax digest, that we'll be able to lower the millage rate on the debt side of the aisle and move that over, as we've done in the past, to assist the general fund at closing the budget through that means. So we now will still have a 5.75 mils, but the debt service mill, you'll see in the top red, is from 0.74 mils down to 0.72 mils, and that 0.02 mils is rolling over to the general fund, bringing it to 5.030 mils. That's about $135,000 to the general fund. And in that time period, just as sort of note that you issued in 2016 a $52 million bond, and in 2022 almost a $30 million bond for Parks bond that you were absorbed inside that structure of that millage structure there. The next slide, I would probably drive everybody insane going over it completely, but it's a good, it's in our published material, plus it's good for just looking back at the history of our millage rate structure. In the early years, it was prior to about 18 years ago, it was a much higher millage rate. Then about 18 years ago, we've kept it steady at 5.75 mils, and inside there, just like I showed in the last slide about the last 10 years, 7 years, in the last 18 years, we've had $115 million in bond issues. We obviously have done significant improvements in our salaries, et cetera, trying to keep up with the area around us, with trying to maintain a top-tier type employer. A lot of park improvements. We've had homestead increases and some other things noted there, but that's the history of the millage rate. The next slide is what we do every year, sort of just to show that our effective millage rate is how to sort of compare it to the cities around us, because we have a higher we have a higher homestead exemption. We all now have a floating homestead exemption, but we still have a $45,000 after the floating homestead is applied. We have a $45,000 homestead, and most of the areas around us have $15,000 floating homestead. So if you look at those millage rates, we're all in the ballpark within a 1 mil, or we're technically like 0.8 mils from the lowest millage rate there from an operation standpoint. Again, a lot of those places, like the number one city on that list, has a stormwater fee, and et cetera. So sometimes our structures are differently, but that's just for you to review and understand our millage structure and our tax structure. Next slide is just, again, it's probably just more from the public standpoint that there's, from a standpoint of property tax relief to our homeowners, to our homesteaded properties, that number is about $10 million. Now, obviously, you could have lowered the millage rates as well, but out of the box, they're getting a $10 million relief for the floating homestead and the homestead exemptions. So if you have any questions on that, let me know. But and as we get more and more, let me give you a perfect example. What that does, and I think I have it in another slide later, our tax digest on our commercial side is pure digest to digest, no exemptions. Commercial would be 45% and residential would be 55% of the digest. Because of the homestead exemptions and the floating homestead exemption, the digest net of the exemptions is the commercial is 55% and residential is 45%. That's the switch of what's happened since the floating homestead primarily has come into place.
Councilman Hipes?
Thank you, sir. What would you repeat those numbers? You said 45, 55, and 45, 55.
Yes.
And I thought I had
our digest. You know, I've always been asked the question how much. We're a pretty big commercial base, and so our commercial digest is 55% of the digest, pure value. If you weren't taking exemptions into account, and then when you take that into account, though, it flips. Commercial becomes only 45% of the net taxpayer, so to speak, to the city under our tax structure, under the property taxes, and residential becomes 45%.
Yeah, I think you got that a little
right
backwards.
There I did. See, I'm only allowed to go through once. Don't make me. I had it the first time. When we add the exemptions, residential drops to 45% of the net taxpayer, and the commercial is 55% net tax. I'm going to cruise and get into the citywide budget with all that as sort of a backdrop. Slide 15. And most of this is not, you remember, at the retreat. So a lot of it has not changed much. We have had some slight changes in our revenue estimates, but very slight since the time we met at the retreat. We pretty much knew where we were heading. But the total budget is a $162 million budget. And last year's in 25 was $164 million. So it's actually down, but it gets confusing when you work in, with municipal governments and total budgets because of the years in which you have fund balance from the year before was much more significant in the general fund, especially, that we had dropped to the bottom line the year before. As we brought that into the 25 budget, it's a greater number than the number we're bringing into the 26 budget because we didn't have the surplus last year like we had the year before. So our budget in total's down. And because of things like sometimes when you recognize the revenues for T-SPLOS, do we jump out and recognize 2 years' worth in 1 year so that we can get the projects appropriated? But that does at least let you know from a high level that what that budget is and what it was compared to the previous year. But of that, the general fund is a $100.9 million general fund budget. And the prior year, that was a $103.6 million budget. And that's my point, that it was the fund balance that primarily you're going to see. But we're going to dive into the general fund in a minute. If you look to the far right, you have that $100.9 million budget for the general fund. And then you go all the way down for all funds, you have the roughly $162 million. And again, I think Brian Wills asked us in the past, we do transfer dollars from the general fund over to the capital projects fund that we transfer over here, and that's just all cities do it, all municipalities. It's part of fund accounting and just what we have to do. But it is all laid out there for you to see. And so sometimes you can be grossing up because you're creating another fund that you're transferring monies to. But all that's there just so you know the impacts of each of those funds if there's any questions on that. So now we'll dive into the general fund overview itself. And the story here is on the revenue side, and we talked about this at the retreat, that if you go all the way down to the bottom, and this is after taking into account that the millage rate's going to roll over 0.20 mils, and we expect 4% growth on residential and only about a 1% or a minus 1% in commercial valuation. You'll see to the far right the growth drivers and the revenue reductions, things that are driving up the growth and things that are driving down the growth over there. But at the end of the day, you only have 1.8% growth in our projection in total operating revenues, 2%. So we're going to turn the slide in a minute, and you know that's already that can be somewhat problematic when you have salaries of 3% or something the market is saying we need to be in the, and you got cover CPI, even though it's down, quite a bit from what it was before. It's a push to get that to work out. But right now, partly because our commercial valuations, we're just not expecting it to be any better, maybe even slightly worse than the previous year. And then, as usual, I think the assessor's office and how they value sort of lags the market. So I do expect that in the future to start going back up, but right now it is down. And as you know, we have the homestead exemption for homesteaded properties can't grow by the greater of the CPI or 3%. And then it takes sales and things like that to take place. And I think this past year, the rates still being relatively high, we didn't see those kind of sales, so we're not projecting that to be that big of a number. But that's it. A bunch of numbers, a bunch of ups and downs, a little bit. Some of it because I think the market has just tightened up, especially on local option sales tax, because of that, between property taxes and local option sales tax. You'd like to see that north of 3%. You'd love to see that in the 4% range. Just unfortunately, we're in a tight time where that's not it's not what we're projecting right now. The next is the overview of the budget of the expenditure side, slide 18. And from there, as you know, the biggest driver in in municipal government is that personal services, payroll, all the benefits is in the range of 65 to 70%. That's pretty much universal for all cities. And that increase, believe it or not, we're able from a budget to budget to get that in at 2.4, even after we are placing a 3% merit-based or salary-based or something. I mean, we're putting in a 3% raise, so to speak, in the budget, and plus covering a little bit of targeted market compensation when we looked out to the market. Nowhere near to the numbers it was in the past. We've made great progress on making sure we are competitive in the market. So, but altogether, that being north of 3%, but ending up at 2.4%, shows that we had probably a little bit of excess in our budget as it relates to like health insurance and things like that, to be able to get the budget in at only a 2.4% on personnel side, given that you have a 3% raise and pension increases, and health insurance came in at 4. Great number, love it at 4, but we got it down to 2.4. So then we have the items we talked about pretty much at the retreat, possible runoff election. We have some dollars we have to start funding now out of the general fund due to the E911 fund and the fact that it's a set dollar amount at $1.50 per landline and cell phone, and at some point that gets saturated. It doesn't necessarily grow by 5% a year as well. Means that certain expenses we've had to pull over into the general fund and pay, and also to be comparable with Milton, who picks up some of their North Fulton regional radio system out of their general fund, and we need to be comparable how we do that. So that's moved over. So those were some big expenses that we moved over to the general fund. And after that, it's pretty much if you go down, you can see where the previous year we brought in $9.5 million in carry forward fund balance. So that in 25 is coming forward from 23 fiscal year. 24's fiscal year is after we finish that year is only able to generate just north of $5 million. And that $5 million we're bringing into the budget and we're going to move it over to capital. And then we had a line item in 2025 of $4 million for capital from the line item in the budget. But given the constraints where we are, we're only going to be able to fund $2.3 million of that number in this budget, in the base budget. And so after we do all that, we'll skip that because I talked a little bit about compensation. We get to slide 21. After you take those two slides together and you say, okay, and at the retreat, I think we mentioned it would be very difficult to have that much money for new operating initiatives. It's just because of the E91 charges coming over, because of just the tightening of the overall budget in the market and the commercial valuation that we're expecting, from new operation initiatives, it was going to be a tough year. We are able to show that we're able to get about $215,000 for new initiatives, and so, that's primarily, you'll see those being allocated below between certain things in Economic Development Department, Public Safety, and Rec and Park on that slide 21. But you also will see that we're a potential for making an adjustment to our business and occupation tax that has not been done in 20 plus years, et cetera, et cetera. That if that potentially could come through to fruition and we were to do that, we would have possibly $850,000 for that, and we earmark that for capital, because you just saw on the slides before we had to somewhat defer or lower the contribution amount towards capital in the base budget. So this would just help replenish a good bit of that by taking that money if and when we pull the trigger on the occupational tax increase or something of that magnitude of $850,000. It will all go to capital, is the projected in the budget. So those are the operating initiatives, the $60,000 for North Fulton Economic Development Alliance, a firefighter position of $104,000, and some dollars to expand the tree lighting up to another $50,000, bringing it to about $100,000 that we spend on that a year. So those are the recommended, and then it follows up as we do every year with the department's not recommended list on slide 22. And if there's no questions, I will move us on to just an overview of the capital. The capital is in total a $27 million capital program. Between all the funds you see there listed across, the primary fund that we work out of from an operational standpoint is the capital project fund. That fund and all the funds across the top, you'll see if they're sitting on available fund balance to be used, that is like unallocated or terms that we use sometimes, we bring that into each of those respective budgets. And then you get to the general fund, as we mentioned. If you take that annual contribution capital appropriation, and you slide it all the way over to the subtotals, you'll see 2.262. That's what used to be $4 million, but in this year's budget, if not assuming the $850,000 gets approved through the operating initiatives of raising the occupational tax, it stands at $2.262 million in the general fund. We're moving it over to cover stormwater and things out of this general capital account. The next one is the $5 million annual fund balance, $5,017,048. That's our fund balance from 2024 that we're bringing over. That was closer to $9 million the year before. It's $5 million, and then we allocate that. So this is the high level of how all those department of funds and by departments how the money is spent. And if I probably, you see the 14.5 million subtotal of uses, and then you see the non-allocated. So we're still leaving balances, for example, in the capital project fund of $1.76 million, that if council reads this list of things not funded and says, I'd like to see that, you pick up another project, that's where you would go, or you remove a project and replace it with something. So following behind there's all the slides that we normally do, and inside the budget book of all the capital request of the departments and what we're funding and what's left in unallocated reserve under each of those scenarios. That's it. Obviously, inside the details are behind there and everything, but you're looking at road maintenance at about 5.1 million, stormwater at 2 million, IT at about 900,000, facility maintenance at about 1.3 million, sidewalks at 750,000, and just replacing fleet in our city is about $2.5 million. So this, obviously we can't show all that detail here. We're just showing that at the high level. But in the budget document, and what we have on the next slide shows you what page in the budget book. So if you want to start from the high level, then you can.
Which page are you on now?
Well, I'm sorry, it's slide 25. If you were to sheet forward from 25 over. Okay. This start getting into the detail of what I just presented. But if you look in the budget book, it puts the budget book page number, so you can take this document and go into the more detail that's provided in the budget document. I'm just trying to, move along, and then if you have questions, you can have them at the end if you'd like. But the calendar, as Chris mentioned, has been amended so that we have the June 2nd workshop, the June 16th first public hearing, and the second on June 23rd and the third on June 23rd. So if there's any questions, that's what I got.
Councilman Hines.
Thank you for the presentation, Director Harris, and thank you for cross-referencing the page numbers in your slides. That's very helpful. Just a few questions. Back on slide 8, which shows the operating versus the debt service.
Correct.
You said something about this may change when the digest comes out. I was trying to follow what you were saying about where it's 0.72 for debt service.
Okay.
What were you saying?
That again. There's two millage rates that we levy. We levy one for operating the general fund operating budget, and then we levy one for the debt millage. Mm-hmm. And each of them have their own. You're levying against a digest. And technically the digests are somewhat different as well, because homestead exemptions and the floating homestead exemptions do not apply to the debt digest, but I don't want to confuse you there. There's a debt digest and a general fund digest. And because we issue bonds and all of our debt is pretty much level debt, then if any projection of additional digest, which we will have because the residential is going to go up 3% and the commercial may stay flat, but we're going to get increase in that digest over on the debt digest side. That millage rate doesn't need to be as high as it was the year before. So the year before it was 0.74 mils. It's now 7.2 mils. So that could roll back your 5.75 mils. You could take that down to 5.73. I wouldn't advise it, and that's not what this budget is recommending. It's recommending you move that to the general fund and increase the general fund mills from 5.010 to 5.030.
So at this stage of the budget discussions, where do you anticipate that 0.720 debt service number to end up being?
0.72.
That's where you expect it to be.
This budget is based on those projections, and that's it.
So, looking across the graph, that's the smallest amount allocated to debt over this period of time. Are we trending in a particular direction? Is it a year-to-year determination?
It's going to continue theoretically for the next 20 years in the neighborhood of slowly going down until you make a decision to raise do a new bond. Then you either got to raise the millage rate to do that, or
when you say going down, what number going down? From where to where? The 0.7.
I would. It's based on let's say we see a 3% value digest growth for the next. I haven't done that calculation, but a 3% every year in the digest. Then the 0.72 is going to drop by 3%. It's going to go down to 5.69. Then it's going to go down to 0.65. It's just going to it's going to continue to go down by the growth of you're multiplying this number times the digest. If this digest goes 3% a year, then this debt number will go down. And then what do you do with that excess? You can put it in a general fund and balance the budget, put it in a general fund and try to earmark it towards capital.
I think I figured out my question. Do we have fewer funds to apply toward the debt in order to do the operating, or we don't need as many funds to apply to the debt?
That we don't need as many dollars to apply towards the debt.
So that's
why
that's a good thing.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And related to that, on the next slide number 9, there's the 4 bonds on there. When do we anticipate those bonds either being consolidated or paid off? For the 2012 bond.
They're all. We
They're all
go through 2041 is what all of our bonds go out to, is 25 years past the, is it 46? Yeah, 2046.
So if nothing changes, that they'll be paid by 2046.
Yeah, some of these will fall off 20 plus years after the date here. Some of them in the 2012 may have been 20 years, but then we've moved to 25-year debt, 25-year maturity. But they've been wrapped around each other so that the total debt can do what we just mentioned, that the total debt is the same. It's about $6.8 or $7 million a year that we pay in debt service. And again, if the digest grows, then you're able to lower that millage rate.
And so as the bonds are paid off in future years, then that would mean even less money that needs to be applied toward the debt service, that 0.72 number.
Correct, although since they're wrapped, you won't see anything more than the digest growth being the reducer. You won't see a debt falling off and suddenly being able to lower the millage rate significantly, because when that debt rolled off, we back-ended the principal on another bond deal to keep the total debt level. So it will lower, but it's only going to lower by like I mentioned earlier, by the digest growth. It really won't lower significantly for the next 20 years based on you suddenly got to the end of that that bond from 2016 won't suddenly mean that you have a big drop in your tax rate, because it's level debt and they've been wrapped around each other. Because it's not like you go buy a mortgage, you get a set principal on that. And when you do bonds, you can establish how much principal you want to push in the early years and how much you want to push in the out years. And so those bonds were wrapped around each other to get a little bit more money. Yeah, 2042 is when it finally drops.
All right.
Drops. It still has bonds out there, but that's the year in which you will see could see a significant tax drop.
Over on the homestead, we were asking the question about the 45-55, and it's 55% commercial with, after applying the homestead, so that the tax burden is being paid more so on the commercial side than the residential side. Are those numbers consistent over the last, 5 to 10 years, that 45-55, or are they?
It's going to keep changing. Floating homestead came in 2000. Losing my brain here. Not too long ago.
I had it in my mind.
2018, I recall. Okay. I just got elected mayor.
So, yes, because it was after the 16-17 issue.
I had it in my mind that as a talking point, if nothing else, our tax burden was 60% or greater on the commercial side, and this is 45-55. And I was just curious, is that a change, or did I just have the number wrong historically?
You had 60 historically being commercial, or 60?
Yes, commercial.
Yeah. It's not quite there now. It'll be there as we continue to get more floating homestead. In theory, although remember, last 2 years you've had a flat, and we're projecting a flat commercial growth, so it won't move there. That's part of the issue, that it didn't really grow the last 2 years.
So this is not a change over prior years. This 45-55.
It probably is a little bit more, just slightly, just a couple percent. Not significant. And it's going to happen everywhere in Georgia. Anywhere now there's a floating homestead. It's just what you do to our homesteaded properties. You are capping their growth. So, and you don't have that on the commercial side. But we're not any different than any other city. It's not something you only adopted it because it was adopted by the state or the county, I should say.
Another question on slide 18 under the recommended budget. These lower numbers for the fund balance, carry forward, and capital program. Mm-hmm. Are you in finance looking at this as a 1-year situation, or are we trending in a particular direction? If we're trending, what are we trending toward?
We're trending towards tighter budgets and not as much dropping to the bottom line. And it's because of the revenue constraints in the last few years. And part of that's because the floating homestead doesn't grow. So you're not able to make a decision as council what to do with it other than raise a millage rate. You used to be able to get 4%, 5% growth sometimes on some value of residential. You don't get that on homestead now. So, yeah, the budget's been a little tighter in that regard. So I don't think the fund balance will, especially as we're about ready to finish up this year, which will be this year's fund balance when we fund 27. It won't be any larger than this $5 million that's here now. And we used to have a little bit towards $8 million, $9 million, $10 million dropping to the bottom line. So there is a tighter budget. Part of that was also, and you guys met the obligation of trying to make sure we were paying the salaries that we needed to pay. And so we had some big significant dollars we had to get into the budget. But I see that getting tighter. The issue for us is how do we what do we have to appropriate something or come up with a funding mechanism down the road to pick up some of our capital, to pick up our capital needs, which has expanded because we've done more parks, we've done more things, that we're doing. We've invested a lot more in those parks, so we need a little bit more capital dollars. So I think that's part of why we're saying it's potentially the occupational tax is a concept to pick up and at least bump that number up.
So the larger dollar maintenance items are primarily capital initiatives: roads, stormwater, sidewalks, right. Trail system. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
And so we build more roads, more trails, more sidewalks, and yet the projected capital to maintain those things in years going forward, it's the window's narrowing a little bit.
Right.
Is that a fair statement?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
We do get a little relief. We're hoping is obviously we get some relief, and I think it's in this budget that T-SPLOS 2 and potentially T-SPLOS 3 can at least pick up the milling and resurfacing number of $3 million to $4 million and not have it be a burden directly on the tax of the property tax in the general fund.
My last,
But your point is accurate.
and you know, I would like to have these budget discussions both in terms of this year and, you know, what we're facing in the upcoming years, and not just get to next year and say, well darn, you know, instead of $5 million carry forward, we're $3 million carry forward, and now we got really limited dollars for capital maintenance and improvements. So, on page slide 24, I see the $27 million capital figure. How does that compare to prior years? So if there's $27 million total dollars for capital, if I'm understanding your presentation, apples to oranges, apples to apples, what?
It can be a little misleading because that number, again, if you pulled out T-SPLOS 2, it all depends when we first appropriated. We get about $12 million in T-SPLOS a year, 12 and a half, some number in that range. And I think some years we may say, oh, we're going to go ahead and project Tier 1 the first few years and bring that in as, you know, as revenues, even though cash flow will come in later. And then that would blow up the budget that year. It's going to make it look like you're that much larger. But short answer is I think that's a little bit lower than it was in prior years as well, primarily, again, because the general fund's not contributing as much over in those.
So if a T-SPLOS 3 project list is compiled, which I understand is in the works, and if it's presented to the residents of Alpharetta and the county, they may have some reason to want to take a look at that.
Right.
From a
yes
dollar sense. So,
yep.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir.
Does anyone else on council have any questions or thoughts on the matter? Thank you, Tom. I mean, we're not voting on it tonight. I think it's good to have some of those questions answered now and to give us some thought. Just in general, for the people that are paying attention online or here in the audience, is floating homesteads of 3% limit the upside for property taxes, which is the overwhelming majority of the revenues for the city of Alpharetta. And that's great. I'm a taxpayer. I appreciate that. But the challenge is when you go through inflationary periods like we have, salaries don't stop at 3%. Insurance doesn't stop at 3%. Paving, the cost of all of those things go up. And so it means we have to tighten our budget. And that's where we are at this point. You know, there's unintended consequences of those 3% floating homesteads. It's great for us as homeowners and property owners and things like that. I understand. But the downside is it has also stymied the real estate market in Alpharetta to a certain extent, because I know my wife and other people in the city of Alpharetta who are in their homes that are property values, the assessments are growing at a small 3% rate every year since 2020 in our case. Some go back to 2018 when it was changed. And they would like to move to a different house in Fulton County, but now they realize that if they do that, the property values are going to be reset at today's market value, which improved a lot in the last 7 years, and they have to pay the current interest rate. So we'll weather this storm. We always will. But that's the fact is that's why our revenues are really not growing at the rate of inflation, and we're not a private business. We don't just, okay, let's charge an extra $50 a hamburger or an extra 75 cents for a cup of coffee and things like that. And so that's why these discussions are really critical in times. It's easy when you got lots of money coming in and not many expenses and inflation's low. Unfortunately, we're just not in one of those periods right now. So I expect it to be a good, healthy discussion, and we'll get business taken care of and continue on like we always do. That being said, We'll go ahead and close the work session unless you need anything else, Mr. Lagerblum.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Sean. So next item up on our agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of the items City Council meeting minutes from the meeting of May 5th, 2025, the 2022 fire truck acquisition of 3 pumpers, Amendment 1 to master lease, the financial management report for the month ending March 31st, 2025. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on the consent agenda?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
Is there anyone on council that would like to remove something from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Mitchell, second by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the motion as outlined, please vote yes.
Mr. Mayor, as a friendly reminder, we are voting by hands in the air today. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thank you for the reminder. You gotta love technology. Next item up is the public hearing, so I'll allow our city attorney, Ms. S. Wine, to announce the public hearing procedures.
An individual requesting to be heard on a matter related to the purpose of the hearing must be recognized by the mayor before addressing the city council. Upon rising to speak, the speaker must identify himself or herself and furnish a home or business address before proceeding with any comments or remarks. The council will allow the proponents a total of 10 minutes to speak in support of an application. Opponents will be allowed 10 minutes to speak in opposition. Comments are accepted first from the applicant, followed by persons speaking in favor, and then from those in opposition. Upon conclusion of any opposing comments or presentations, the mayor will allow the applicant to offer rebuttal time if any time is remaining in the originally allotted 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. So the first item under public hearing is MP-25-05, CU-25-07, Northwind Summit MP/Vertiport. Mr. Woodman, could you explain what a vertiport is, please, sir?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The first item before you is a request for master plan amendment and conditional use to allow a heliport for a vertiport located on the top level of a parking deck, which will serve nearby commercial and office uses. Master plan amendment is requested to add a heliport to the Northwind Summit master plan, and a conditional use is requested to allow a heliport for the applicant's proposed vertiport. There are no current development plans to construct the vertiport or parking deck. The applicant just wants to ensure that the use is permitted if requested to be incorporated into future development within this mixed-use development. This property is located at 1000 Summit Place, and that's at the southeast corner of Haynesbridge Road and Summit Place. I did hand out some exhibits that I would like to reference in the presentation. The first exhibit, of course, is the location map. This property is zoned MU mixed use, and it is subject to the Northwind Summit Master Plan. That's a 24-acre mixed-use development that includes for rent, for sale residential, office, and commercial uses, as well as it's approved for a hotel. As I mentioned, the request is for a heliport. That is the use that we have listed in our code. That is the use that is most similar to a vertiport. Heliport is generally defined, it's not defined in our code, but a heliport is generally defined as a landing and takeoff place for helicopters. The vertiport is actually associated with advanced air mobility. And the next two exhibits in your packet that I handed out to you will go over the advanced air mobility. But basically what that refers to is the transport of passengers and cargo, short to medium range distances, and this is using new and emerging aircraft technologies, such as electric vertical takeoff and landing aircrafts, or EVTOL. Within our code, heliport is permitted by right in the light industrial zoning district as well as the special use zoning district, and it's allowed with conditional use in the AG, CUP, O&I, PSC, and MU zoning districts. Looked at our existing master plans throughout the city as well, and we found that heliport is an allowed use in the Preston Ridge Master Plan, Oxford Green, Resurgence Park, Mansell Ridge, and Sanctuary Park. The last two pages of the exhibits that I handed out to you are the applicant's site plan pages. I believe there were 6 pages here. So page 5 gives you an overall of the North Winds Summit mixed-use development. Again, this is about
Mr. Whitman,
I'm sorry.
Are the people here in the audience able to see these?
So these exhibits are all within the council packet.
I know. I was just curious for people that are in the audience or watching online if these are available.
We're not able to.
Mayor, we don't have video tonight. We don't have. So
that's fine. I just wanted to ask in case.
I would like to get, and since you brought it up, I'm typing an email on just this topic. If we want to take a couple minutes and go make another 10 packets of this, we really should have come with about 15 packets so that we can make sure the public, the media, city clerk, city attorney, and I can follow along as well. So if you wouldn't mind a 5-minute recess while we made those copies, it would be really helpful.
Is there anybody that might be able to pull that together? Do we have an intern or anything? Okay. I just think it would be helpful
Just the
for the people that are here, took time out of their day to hear the discussion. I feel bad for anyone that doesn't have a visual illustration of what we're talking about here.
We'll do that for the 2 public hearings. I think it's important that the visuals be available for anybody who might want to speak in favor or in opposition to the 2 public hearing items.
Sounds great. Thank you, Mr. Woodman. Yep. Please continue.
Would you like me to continue? Okay.
Yes, please continue.
So on the site plan, page 5 of the site plan shows the overall mixed-use development, North Wind Summit mixed-use development, and then the last page focuses in on the corner of Haynesbridge Road and Summit Place. And that is the location of a future parking deck. There is a proposed retail building right out front of that parking deck that would front on Summit Place. And then the 3-level parking deck would be situated behind that retail building. Retail building's about 10,000 square feet. And then on the 3rd level of that parking deck is where the vertiport would be located. And you can see in the call out on that last exhibit, it does show 4 vertiport landing pads, as well as a just under 11,000 square foot terminal. And then we looked at the review criteria for the master plan amendment and conditional use. We found that the vertiport was compatible with surrounding properties, which are primarily developed and approved as office parks and mixed-use developments. Heliport uses are commonly located on building rooftops, parking decks, as well as surface parking lots. And there are several master plans in the city that allow heliport as a permitted use. The applicant did provide a citizen participation report indicating that they did not receive any public comments, and they also did not receive any public comments at the April 9th Community Zoning Information Meeting. And then this item was considered by Planning Commission at their May 1st meeting. There were also no public comments at that meeting, and the Planning Commission recommended unanimous approval of the item, subject to the 4 conditions in your staff report in your council packets. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Mayor Pro Tem Merkel.
All right, Michael, so you went back and forth between calling it a heliport and what was the other term you used?
Vertiport.
Vertiport. So there were some questions that came out today that were sent to me saying that's a terrible place for a helicopter pad because of everything that's around there and the noise and how loud a helicopter is, right? Well, they were out, for some reason there was a bunch of them out over the weekend. Are you going to make this a heliport or are you going to make it a vertiport?
This is, so the conditions, if this is approved, there are 4 conditions that were recommended by Planning Commission, and those conditions tie it to a vertiport. And a vertiport would only serve the electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicle, not a helicopter.
All right, so we're not adding a helipad to this location.
You are not. We only referencing heliport because that is the use that is listed in our UDC, our Unified Development Code, that is closest to a vertiport.
Can we not add the different verbiage?
We could certainly amend our code to add a new use category for vertiport. But I do believe tonight, we are covered with the conditions that would limit it only to a vertiport and the EVTOL vehicles.
I would like to look towards before the second reading, changing that. I'd like to add that terminology and then approve that terminology and not do a heliport.
Okay, so we would have to, so this doesn't get the vote would be done on this tonight, so I guess we would need to defer this and we could bring a code change back.
I don't want any confusion. I don't want somebody to come back later, intentionally or unintentionally, and say, well, technically it's still allowed. And then I got Channel 2 News making this their stopover in the afternoons. And
we could certainly bring a code change back if you would like to.
Ms. Aswine, if I could.
Take some time.
Is there any way for us to approve language that could be changed by the second reading?
Well, so ordinarily for zoning, we don't have a first or a second reading, so there wouldn't be a second reading. If you were to postpone the vote to give staff time to look at the condition and see if there's a way to draft the condition in a way that made the council a little bit more comfortable, we could do that. It sounds like staff has interpreted the heliport as encompassing the vertiport use, but the permitted use that would be added by approval of this would limit the use of the heliport to the vertiport. I think I've said that right, Michael?
Yes.
So if y'all want our office to consult with staff and get that condition cleaned up to where council can be comfortable with it, we can certainly do that, but there wouldn't be a second reading or a code change by the next meeting. A code change to expressly add a vertiport as a different use would require a UDC amendment, which would have to go to the Planning Commission and then to you all, which would take
that's
roughly
kind of
2
what
months.
I'm looking for, is to have a separate category versus, this is like insurance. They negate the negative to make it a positive. So in this case, we're going to approve a heliport, but it's not really a heliport because you can't use helicopters. You can only use vertiport.
As to the use, I'm going to have to defer to staff on that. I haven't had a chance to research it. It sounds like the heliport encompasses the vertiport. I can't say specifically otherwise because I haven't had a chance to look into that. If you'd like me to work with them and see about postponing the decision on this until there can be something more done, we can do that. But there's not going to be a code amendment.
If I could just interrupt you, because I've got 2 people already wanting to speak, so I'll ask that Councilman Mitchell speak, and then I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Lagerbloom and see if he has any way to reconcile this.
We've done this a million times. I think it's just a simple change of, there's only 4 conditions. We just scratch out heliport and put vertiport. Why would that, and then we define what a vertiport is, and we can get it passed tonight. Is that?
We could certainly add an additional condition and just clarify that it's limited to a vertiport, and there's a general definition out there for vertiport. We could add that if you want in the condition.
Right, because I only see heliport mentioned in 1 and 2 of the conditions, and we can just change that to vertiport and still get it done tonight.
We don't have a definition of vertiport.
Hold on. Mr. Lagerbloom?
Thank you. I kind of see this maybe progressing one of two ways. We don't have the vertiport is a defined term in the code today. We have heliport. So if you are wanting a definition of vertiport, then the actual request for tonight would be a completely different request. It would be a request to add the word vertiport to this site. So we would really stop this process, go back and amend the UDC to include a new definition we don't have today, and then bring this forward again. If you are comfortable that because we do have a definition of heliport and that we have conditioned it such that I even think the city attorney says we're protected in making that decision, that it could move forward as with terminology as a heliport that's conditioned to just a vertiport use. But if your desire is to have the UDC change to include a definition for vertiport, we need to push pause on this. We need to go do that and then bring this back.
Councilman Dorito, sorry, I didn't notice your hand a minute ago.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael, is there a sensitive timeline to this?
None that I'm aware of.
Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not approving a vertiport at this site. We're approving the ability to put a vertiport on the site, correct? If we pass
so
this tonight.
there's not a very specific plan to construct this vertiport at this time. It's really getting it added into this master plan for a future opportunity should it arise.
So the reason why I asked that question is I agree with Mayor Patem's comments regarding, addressing the definition of a vertiport and incorporating that into our UDC code, which has to go through the Planning Commission, whatever. It's going to take a little time. But as long as there's no time-sensitive nature to this, why wouldn't we just establish a UDC code properly so that we don't have any confusion or any sort of challenge in the future by some unknown party that wants to bring a helicopter into Alpharetta? So
yeah, we can certainly do that.
I'm in line with the Mayor Patem's comments.
Mayor, may I ask a question? Do you mind?
Absolutely. That's what we pay you there.
So one option for that condition, and I don't know if it would address your concerns or not, Councilman Merkel, if we added a condition that said, the heliport use is approved, but you shall be limited to electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft and shall be prohibited for use by helicopters or traditional helicopters or something along those lines. Would that address the concern you have? To very expressly say that it shall be limited to a type of takeoff and landing?
Well, I think, as to what Councilman Dorito said, I'd like to get it right, and I feel like I'm taping this thing together to get it through tonight when there is no hurry on this. There is no plan. They're not asking to build one. The applicant that's here understands that we are on this path to get this done and get it done right, and I also want to respect the neighbors that are worried. You keep using the word helipad, I don't trust you. I mean, maybe trust us right now, but maybe it gets approved and maybe they sell the facility and the next guy walks in and his attorney said, no, we found a way to get through this. This is a helipad. I'd like to get it right, and if we especially have time and there is no sensitive urgency to this, I would like to go back, change the code, or change make it a different category. And let helipads be helicopters and let this be vertipads. Okay. Whatever. I don't tell you call it.
Vertiports, man. Get with the slang. Councilman Hypes.
I think part of the issue here is number 2 of the recommendations uses a term that still is not defined. It says limited to submitted plans depicting a vertiport, but we still don't have a definition for that in the code, so I don't know that we've advanced anything by using a term that limits the use that doesn't have a definition. And, I would agree with the rest of council who's spoken so far that, I think we should come up with a definition, and I think it should be a thoughtful definition based off of what the technology is. It involves air taxis. I don't know that they're 100% electric. I think, as they said, we should get it right, and I don't think we should use a term that's a limiting term that's not defined. So,
Councilman Mitchell.
Michael, the condition number 4, shall provide evidence of compliance with FAA standards for planning, design, and construction of the proposed facility. Do we have those FAA standards at this point? I know this has been a 10-year thing that's being planned around the world. I know Dubai already does it and things like that. But is Georgia, or is our state law clear on it? Is the FAA clear on it, on what the conditions are?
I can't speak to state law, but FAA does have standards. There are vertiports that have been constructed within the United States. They're very limited, and the infrastructure is still growing. But there are some standards there, yes.
Okay. And the next question is directed at Molly. Does it in any way hold the city liable having a vertiport and allowing, because this won't be the first one that Alpharetta has. There's a lot of people that leave from Alpharetta and would like to get in one of these autonomous vehicles to go to the airport. And I would say that's within the next 5 to 10 years. So the way the technology is advancing, it seems.
By incorporating the use into the code, are we liable?
Yes.
I can't give you a blanket statement on that, but generally speaking, I wouldn't expect so, no. But I would, to give you a definitive answer, I'd have to look into it further. But generally, we're just allowing people to develop, and then how it's developed and how it's used falls on the individual users.
But before we come back, can you do a little research on that to see if there's any crossover there?
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and I'll remind council that we're still in the presentation, so the applicant will have an opportunity to speak. So, Mr. Woodman, do you have any other questions for Mr. Woodman at this time? Mr. Woodman, you feel free to proceed if you'd like.
Oh, presentation was done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward at this time?
Good evening. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you and for your time and attention to this matter. My name is Kerry Armstrong. I live at 2200 Sugarloaf Club Drive in Duluth, 30097. I'm managing director of Pope and Land Enterprises. We're a real estate development company, and the primary owner. We are the owner of this site and the primary owner of all of the remaining property in this development. There is no urgency to this per se. We became aware of advanced air mobility advances over the last 3 or 4 years, and really as an exercise, we're trying to figure out as real estate people, what does a vertiport look like? You know, how big is it? How does it fit? How does it work? All of this is being developed simultaneously, and we've been amazed that as we said, all right, let's talk to the best people we can find that are experts, either the original equipment people, the FAA, the legislature, whoever it is, engineers, designers, builders. Here's what we think it's going to take. Here's the best information we have. Let's put one on here and then tear it apart, and see why it wouldn't work. And in the 3-year process, we have not found a fatal flaw. On the contrary, we've found a lot of support for the fundamental attributes that this site has uniquely that make it a prime opportunity for a vertiport. Now, I can assure you that our entire interest in this is for electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. We don't want a helipad there either. We own the balance of the property. We have developed the balance of property. We have tenants. We have neighbors. We have partners. So, and I understand your confusion because all of this is being invented as we speak. The FAA has issued guidelines. I promise you they will change. Everywhere you look, somebody has a business plan or a model that is continually forming, and I promise you it will change over the next several years. We are convinced that these are real. We are convinced that they will become a viable piece of our transportation network, and they will offer some advancements in safety and economy that we don't have now. And we're all about a grid. We're all about having a lot of tools in the toolbox. So we simply decided to step out here and let's just see what we can make happen, or what should happen in this regard. We've been consulting with your staff, consulting with the state, and consulting with others. And as we pick it apart and say, well, what could go wrong, an important question is, does our zoning allow for something like this? And that's why we're here. We want to go ahead and remove that question as we go through our ever-growing and shrinking list of questions about why this might not work. Well, the lack of support of the city or approval from the city certainly would be a reason why it could not work. So that's why we've advanced it now. We have preliminary designs that are being vetted. We have concepts. We don't have a client. We don't have a customer. We don't have a vertiport airline operator. But we've done a lot of homework to kind of see how that's framing up. So I understand your confusion. There is no, what if Hartsfield-Jackson wanted to name themselves a spaceport? Well, you know, how does that work? You know what I mean? Vertiport is not a universally accepted language. I've heard vertiport. I've heard eVTOL, O&D for origination and destination. I've heard vertistop. There's no kind of universally accepted nomenclature for what they are. What we are trying to figure out is an origin and destination spot in Alpharetta, which is ideally suited and has a lot of attributes that lend itself well to this concept for eVTOLs. Now, there's even a problem there. They're already testing hydrogen-powered eVTOLs. So if we say, okay, we're only going to use this for electric vertical takeoff and landing, and then hydrogen becomes the thing in 8 years, then we've kind of got to figure that out too. So I understand your confusion completely. I understand your desire to pause. We just need to have an answer to that question so that we know that we can continue to spend money and resources in trying to figure this out. So that's where we are, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions from the applicant? Councilman Dorito?
You can comment, but you want me to wait?
If you don't have a question, we'll wait until there's discussion, I think. It's probably more appropriate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if there's anyone that would like to come forward and speak on this item, now is your chance to do so. Were you clear on the instructions for public comment?
I have to give my name.
Pardon?
My name and my
Name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay.
And
That's basically it.
may I ask, are you speaking in favor or in opposition?
And just, I'm partially opposition. I'm not completely
Well,
convinced.
I just
How's
have to
that?
know for purposes of timekeeping.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
thank you.
Name's Diana Jagger. I live at 925 Hunter Court in Kimball Farms here in Alpharetta, and we're just as Councilman Merkel and Mr. Dorito have said, we just want to make sure that the language is correct. We've had the helicopters. I understand, first responders, things like that, the noise. I just don't think we need a heliport right here amongst all the residential and things. So I think it is important that we do get the verbiage right. I'm still not completely convinced about a vertiport either, because nobody has shown me what a vertiport vehicle will sound like coming over neighborhoods and things like that, and to have the actual port there. So anyway, I'm in agreement with, I would like for the council to perhaps pause and get all the language correct before they consider doing this, so that nobody comes in and puts in a helicopter pad right there. Sorry. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we have a motion from council?
Before you do that, Mr. Mayor, before you do that, I know you're ready to move on and get some action. I just want to make sure that we're fair in our representation of the applicant tonight as well as to the members of the public that are here. I do want to have the city attorney weigh in on some FAA guidance that she's located that I think maybe clears up some of this heli-stop vertiport language. And I'll turn it over to her, but if you're okay with that, I want to make sure that everybody's fairly
absolutely
represented in their comments tonight.
Figure out this, the better off we are.
And not to throw a wrench in things, but just so that we follow our public hearing procedures to a T, the applicant had rebuttal time if he wanted to use it. So I did want to ask if there was
now
anything.
the most efficient time, or is there a discussion that Mr. Lagerbloom wants to insert at this stage before?
I'll go ahead and answer.
I'd like her to insert hers and then allow me.
So while we were listening to the final presentation and from the applicant, I was just looking it up. And from guidance that was issued by the FAA in December 27th of 2024, the very first page of this memorandum to all airports says infrastructure classification. This is supplemental guidance to an advisory circular regarding heliport design, and says vertiports are a type of heliport with distinct specification requirements. And so it definitely is. I just wanted to confirm that for you all to understand that vertiports are officially by the FAA considered a type of heliport. Now, you could certainly still add that in as a separate use under the UDC, and we can certainly make sure that we define it, but I did want to at least clarify that for you all, so that you would know that that's how they are classified. They are considered a subset of the heliport. And so whether you do the UDC amendment or not, which it sounds like that's what you want to do, you could, even if another applicant came forward, limit or restrict use based on those kinds of subclassifications. So I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that.
Councilman Heitz would like to either say something or a question.
Yeah, for Ms. Eswine. The Georgia House, or excuse me, the Georgia legislature passed a bill. The ink's barely dry. It was May 13th of this year. It was signed into law. But the summary is it amends a code section for general provisions related to aviation, provides Department of Transportation with authority over vertiports, and further says to provide for definitions. And so, my hope is if we're trying to get a unique definition for the city of Alpharetta, that maybe we track if there is a definition and some explanation given in the state legislative act, that we can track that. And, I'm happy to talk offline. It's HB 156. And I'm happy to report that two of our delegation, Representative Todd Jones and Scott Hilton, were two of the sponsors on that. But we may find some definitions where we can but be consistent in how we approach this.
Absolutely. And you all know that we frequently borrow definitions and mirror the language in state law. You're going to see it when we talk about occupation taxes here in just a little bit. So absolutely.
Would the applicant like to come and respond to rebuttal?
This is not a rebuttal, just simply to provide some information. The question about concern about noise was the first question we looked into, and I've been assured that these vehicles being electric with multiple electric motors and smaller propellers, that the takeoff and landing noise level, and this is from others who are experts, is roughly equivalent to a residential vacuum cleaner. So the likelihood is that if you're standing next to it, you will hear the traffic on the roads before you'll hear an eVTOL takeoff and landing. Again, that's anecdotal, but it comes from people who seem to know. But I can assure you that was our first question was, we don't want a heliport. We don't want that noise. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a motion from council?
Would you prefer a table to get this worked out? Do you want a time frame?
I think a time frame would be most appropriate, and you could do it based on the trigger by the UDC amendment.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't. I would keep this one in the pipeline as it is, and maybe that language would be a motion to defer until the meeting immediately following the amendment of the Unified Development Code related to vertiport.
Exactly. What he said. You good with that, Lauren?
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilman Dorito. Any discussion? I'll just say, well, go right ahead,
Just
Councilman
quickly,
Dorito.
Mr. Armstrong, appreciate your presentation and your interest in maybe even considering putting what we'll call tonight a vertiport in Alpharetta. When I was in grade school, I remember watching the Jetsons every morning before leaving for school, and always thought, like as a little kid, kind of neat flying around in these little cars and things, or little whatever they called them back then. But you know, we're at this point now in the world, and particularly in this country. And I think you know, I'm all for entrepreneurship, and that, you know, Alpharetta being the first city to even kind of venture down this path and implement the UDC code that supports something like this. I do think through the process, as our fellow residents spoke about, we'll do our due diligence on noise levels and impact on the community and make sure there is no negative impact. But also want to make sure that Alpharetta is on the forefront of these types of, I'll call futuristic opportunities, because I do think it lends itself not only to, you know, short period transportation, another mode of transportation, and get people off the roads, but probably be used in a public safety potential in the future, and other means that you know, basically help not only Alpharetta, but help our country stay ahead of the world as far as technology and opportunities. And as was mentioned earlier tonight when we spoke about Terzo, with Tech Alpharetta, you know, great cities or great municipalities attract investment, attract people to move here. And it's things like this that we're discussing as a city council that continue to make Alpharetta a special place that it is, because we always seem to be very progressive here as long as I've been around, and that's a good thing. So, and as you could sense from the mayor and fellow council members this evening, we'd like to do it right, like to get it right and make sure that we're in a position to achieve what we're trying to achieve through the process, and not just, you know, pass things without nilly-willy and not really understand what impact it's going to have on the future of Alpharetta. And so I look forward to continuous discussion on this.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion as outlined by Mayor Pro Tem and second by Councilman Dorito, please vote yes.
Or raise your hand.
Technology, man. Can they come up with one that works? It looks unanimous. Thank you. We'll look forward to the further discussion and next opportunity. So we'll move on to the next item in the public hearing, and that is CU-25-08 VPP Animal Hospital. Mr. Woodman, once again, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The next item before you is a request for conditional use to allow an animal hospital, small animal, for VPP Animal Hospital. This is within a 4,525 square foot suite in an existing shopping center. This property is located at 12460 Crabapple Road, Suite 103, and this is the Crabapple Village Shopping Center. The 15-acre property is Zone C2, General Commercial. And if you're not familiar with the center, this is the center with Kroger as the anchor. The applicant's business is proposed within Suite 103, which was previously occupied by Petco. The animal hospital small animal use is permitted by right in the light industrial zoning district and as a conditional use in the AG agriculture, CUP community unit plan, C1 neighborhood commercial, C2 general commercial, O&I office institutional, and PSC planned shopping center zoning districts. And the specific business, VPP Animal Hospital, is a new general practice animal hospital providing preventative care, wellness care, and full-service surgeries. And that's for cats and dogs. The primary veterinarian and co-owner of the business is Dr. Forrester Golston. He is an advanced orthopedic surgeon known for his ACL repair surgery. The business does not provide any boarding services, and the hours of operation are proposed to be Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and Sundays, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Estimated that the business will have up to 8 employees. The applicant is proposing noise attenuation within the suite, and they do also propose a pet relief area at the front of the building, so before you enter into the building, and that area will be maintained by the business. We looked at the conditional use review criteria. We believe the proposed use is compatible with surrounding uses and other locations for this business, which are similarly situated in commercial corridors and in shopping centers. The applicant did provide a citizen participation report indicating that they had received some questions at the April 9th Community Zoning Information Meeting. Those questions were about whether or not the business was going to have boarding or not, and then whether the business would be maintaining the pet relief area. And this item was presented to Planning Commission at their May 1st meeting. There were no public comments at that meeting, and Planning Commission recommended unanimous approval of the item, subject to the 7 conditions in the staff report in your council packets. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Councilman Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Woodman. Describe, without describing in great detail, the pet relief area. Is that on the sidewalk? You say it's before you enter the building?
Yeah, so Kathy handed out a 4-page exhibit to you. The first page was the location map. The second page is the site plan for the 15-acre center. So you see the old former King Grill. It says on here it was actually Petco. In that little corner, triangular-shaped area that says patio, do you see that in front of the yellow highlighted box? That is where the pet relief area is.
Oh, thank you.
So there's the large site plan with the shopping center and the parking area, and you can see the building that has been highlighted. Right in front of that building, out on the sidewalk area, there's the letters, the word patio. That is where the relief area is. And page 3 of the 4-page exhibit document shows that pet relief area, kind of in that triangular area between the 2 buildings where they make the turn.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Woodman? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to come forward at this time?
Hello, my name is Christopher Kidd. I'm the architect for the project, and this is Dr. Golston, who is the doctor that this is his practice.
Do you have any statements or anything you'd like to say on behalf of your application?
I can say that we're the architect for the project. We design these projects throughout the United States. The project is designed to the highest standards of veterinarian care, and we've done everything we can to ensure that there is nothing offensive to the neighbors, be it sound, transmitting in through the demising wall. We created and staff encouraged us to do this, we created a relief area that's enclosed with decorative fencing and has seating, and it has a gate so that our patients can go in and go to the restroom without being unsightly or unsanitary to the rest of the shopping center, and that would be kept, spotless by our crew. Inside the facility, we have administrative space, procedure rooms, exam rooms, employee support space, areas waiting for cats, waiting for dogs, and it's all designed to the highest of standards, both the local building code that's required and other codes that we have to respond to. So the doctor is really the expert on care, so I'll turn it over to him.
Hey, thank you for having me. Nice to meet y'all. Basically, just I guess I can give you a little bit about myself, but I grew up in the Alpharetta area. I've been, everywhere from Marietta to Cumming, and I've kind of always had this area, just on my sights. As y'all said, it's an incredible city and a great opportunity. I think with the landscape and vet med changing, there's a lot of opportunity for general practitioners to continue to teach younger generations how to do, more surgeries and, be more, effective and capable than just, sending everything out to a referral hospital. So, in a sense, that's kind of where I, sense this hospital, probably be, a lot of, heavily based on surgery, but, general wellness care and preventative care. But in a nutshell, that's essentially what we're looking to do. But no interest in boarding or, no immediate interest in grooming. So I don't really foresee much of a noise issue, especially after hours or, even during hours, really, for that matter. So, but that's essentially what we're aiming to do. So, happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions for the applicant? Well done.
Thank you.
Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
I do not have any public comment cards.
However, is there anyone that would like to come and speak in favor of this item? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment in favor. Do we have anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this application? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment on that as well. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, to offer a motion this evening to approve CU-25-08 VPP Animal Hospital as presented by Mr. Woodman.
Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, a second by Councilman Dorito to approve the item. Do we have any discussion? Wish you the best of luck. All those in favor, please vote yes. Oh, Jesus. Okay. It's unanimous. Congratulations, sir. Thank you. You're welcome. So next item up is the ordinance for the city code text amendments, occupational licenses, taxes, and regulations. This is the first reading, so Ms. Eswine will read the ordinance aloud and present. Ms. Eswine, you have the floor.
An ordinance by the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend Chapter 28, Occupational Licenses, Taxes, and Regulations, Article 2 of Chapter 42, Insurer License Fees, and Article 3 of Chapter 42, Occupation Tax of the Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to provide for effective dates, to repeal all ordinances in conflict herewith, and for other purposes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, this is the first reading of an ordinance proposing to modify the annual license fee along with some other purposes. As you recall from, I think, several years now, we've had discussions about taking a look at how to fund our future, primarily on the capital side of the equation. And one of the revenue items we've looked at and compared it to other cities as far as the tax structure and revenue structure of our city, it has been the occupational tax. As we've shown in the past, and I think we discussed at the retreat a little bit, we are, our structure is the least progressive, the lowest rate, primarily probably for almost all cities that we compare ourselves to and surround ourselves with. That fee structure has not been modified or any change in rates for over 20 years. We do it based on an employee count, and most of the cities around us do it on employee count and or gross receipts. So they do it based on if Costco is making a certain amount of money, then there's big numbers they pay. So, but in short, we collect about 1.3 million a year. Give you an idea, Milton collects about 1.25 million a year. Vice versa, cities around us, Roswell is up towards 7 million on how their fee structure is. What we're requesting here is increasing for every business the additional $25 for the administration admin fee, increasing it by $25 to $75, increasing a base fee depending on where you fit with the number of employees, you pay additional $25 there. So all businesses would need to pay us $50 more a year, and then on top of that, $10 per employee. So the impact of that is about approximately $850,000 we'd be able to generate for the general fund. And I still believe we'd be significantly less burdensome with that rate on our businesses than our surrounding cities.
Thank you, sir.
Do
we have any questions?
Just if you may want to add, Molly, some other items that were also in the item itself, cleaning it up with state law.
That's right. So you'll see some other changes in here. Most of them are intended to provide greater clarity and readability in the ordinance. So, Councilman Hypes just mentioned, mirroring state law. We did amend a couple of provisions related to location or office, but it was just to provide for readability. It's still substantively almost identical to state law. We just divided it up for readability's sake, adding in the table for the way that the fees are assessed, and then otherwise clarifying due dates and delinquency dates. So one of the more major changes is clarifying when the taxes are due and payable. So it's always been for a calendar year, right? It goes from January 1 to December 31. But we had a due date of February 15th, I believe, and then it was delinquent April 1st. And we're simply cleaning that up and tightening it up according to state law. So it is due and payable on January 1. It's still not considered delinquent until 90 days after it's due, which would still be April 1st. So not anything material there, but just cleaning up and making more clear what the city's procedures are.
Excellent, thank you. Councilman Mitchell.
I'm looking here, and Dan and I spoke earlier through email. I'm not seeing where this can be raised without coming back before the council. Is that correct?
That's correct at this point, no.
So from here forth until you get a future council vote,
correct,
it won't be more than $50 per
well,
business based on the employees.
It's whatever the chart is, right. It's additional. I was mentioning the additional amounts, but yes, the fee structure would stay in place until we came back before the council.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Shapiro.
I have no public comment cards.
However, if anyone would like to come speak in favor of this item or opposed, now's your chance. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? All those in favor of the motion that will be.
we can do it at the same time. Y'all listen fast. I'd make a motion tonight to approve the ordinance of City Code text amendment, occupational licenses, taxes, and regulations as presented in this packet.
Second. Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, a second by Councilman Hypes. Any discussion? Councilman Hypes.
Mr. Mayor, I have supported this for a number of years. It brings us in line with the surrounding municipalities, and it's far more equitable internally in terms of how the fees are charged. And so I think this is a welcome change. The city has changed considerably over the last 20 years, and to have frozen those amounts for 20 years has been something that it's time to have it looked at and addressed. So I'm glad to see it brought forward.
That's it. Do we have any other questions, comments? All right. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Did everybody raise? I couldn't see down there. Okay. It is unanimous. So the motion does pass. It was unanimous. We'll move on to the next item, which is PH-25-07 Unified Development Code Text Amendments Downtown Park. Oh, see, I wasn't paying attention earlier when I mentioned the deferred items, because that items E and F on your printed agenda were deferred. Item E for the Unified Development Code Text Amendments Downtown Parking has been deferred until July 28th, 2025 City Council meeting. And PH-25-03 Unified Development Code Text Amendment for zoning districts and permitted use districts and regulations has been deferred until July 28th as well. So hope you haven't been sitting here waiting to see that item discussed. It won't be heard this evening. So then move on to new business, and the first item under new business is Georgia Department of Transportation Local Road Assistant Administration Grant Application. Director Sisevich, you have the floor.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. It's not often I can confront you and say we have $851,000 coming to us for our roads from GDOT. And working with staff, we decided to break it up between about $600,000 for milling resurfacing in FY26, and the remaining dollars will go towards our bridge maintenance program.
Thanks, sir. Do we have any questions for Mr. Sisevich? Seeing none? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if there's anyone that would like to come speak about this item, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mayor, I move to approve the resolution to authorize the submission of a fiscal year 2025 local road assistance grant application to the Georgia Department of Transportation, and authorize for the mayor to execute the submittal cover letter and necessary documents.
I have a motion by Councilman Dorito. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
I think Councilman Mitchell started his second first. So it's motion by Councilman Dorito, second by Councilman Mitchell. Any discussion? Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
We certainly need the funds, and you'll do a great job of applying them. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. And it is unanimous. The item passes. Next item is request for proposals 25-111 MSA or MS4 inspection and services. Director Sisevich.
We'll stick with our acronyms. MS4 standing for Municipal Separate Stormwater System. Basically, our stormwater pipes, our inlets, our catch basins, we are required to inspect them, 20% a year. So for 5 years, the whole entire city will be inspected. Issue an RFP. We had 7 firms submit proposals. We evaluated it based off of the proposal as well as costs, and Integrated Science and Engineering was the highest rated firm with the lowest cost of $117,850. It is a 5-year contract.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Director Sisevich? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have?
We have no public comment cards for this item, sir.
However, if anyone wants to rush up here and speak on this item, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mayor. Move to approve award request for approval RFP 25-111 to Integrated Science and Engineering for MS4 stormwater inventory inspections and services for an amount totaling $117,850 for the 2025-2026 MS4 reporting year, and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Do we have? And we have a second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion, gentlemen? All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Pete. Next item, Municipal Court Trip Program. Director Lappin, now is your chance to come forward and present.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item is a MOU between the Administrative Office and the courts and the city for use of the Tax Refund Intercept Program, which will allow us to submit unpaid fines due to the court. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Director Lappin? I appreciate you bringing this item forward. It may help a little bit.
Hopefully.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ms. Shapiro?
We have no public comment cards for this item.
However, now's your chance for public comment. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Somebody want to help out?
I'll make a motion that we approve the municipal court trip program as presented by Director Lappin.
Second.
We have a motion by the mayor and a second by Councilman Dorito. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And it's unanimous. Next item, Youth Athletic Association's Facility Use Agreement, North Atlanta Football League. Director Rogers, it's wonderful to see you here this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's certainly good to be here tonight. We are here tonight for the consideration of approval of the annual facility use agreement with the North Atlanta Football League to do a full football program at North Park. This is the last of the hurdles that we have with our football program this year. A couple of weeks ago, we did the RFP approval for NAFL to be our provider, and this is the annual agreement that we have that outlines the dates that they do and the rules that we expect, like certification of coaches and the general conditions that they have to play under. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Do we have any questions for Director Rogers? Director, the only question I have is, are you confident that this agreement will be enforced?
Yes, sir. I have 110% confidence that it will be enforced.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We have no other questions. Ms. Shapiro?
We have no public comment cards on this item.
However, I'd come forward and speak on NAFL, now's your chance, and no one's coming forward, so we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Mayor, make a motion that council approve an annual facility use agreement between the City of Alpharetta and the North Atlanta Football League, Inc. as a partnered athletic association with the city, and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
I have a motion by Councilman Hypes, a second by Councilman Mitchell. Any discussion? Glad we have an agreement that hopefully will be enforced this time, and we won't have to go through this in 4 more years. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And it passes unanimously, so we'll move on to the next item, which is the resolution, McCoy Way right-of-way disposition. Ms. Eswine, do you mind reading that resolution and present public comment?
A resolution by the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to dispose of certain surplus right-of-way along McCoy Way. So, Mayor and Council, this is related to a road abandonment near 12200 McCoy Way that you all approved, I believe, in 2023. The adjacent property owners, the Justin and Allison Hayworth, had inquired about purchasing the property from the city, and we have followed the statutory procedures for that. The value of the property is set at $6,000, and so what this resolution does is basically provides that the city is disposing of the property upon receipt of the $6,000 payment from the Hayworths. Then we will have the mayor execute a quitclaim deed transferring the ownership of the property, the disposed right-of-way, to the Hayworths. Our office can assist them with recording, and then the transaction will be complete.
And if you could just explain to council why this is more efficient than going through an actual closing and
Oh,
costs?
absolutely. So it's just more efficient all around to have to go through a closing with the formal procedures related to it. And state law allows for this related to this kind of disposition. And so having the disposal via the resolution with the exhibit of the quitclaim deed that you are going to be using can transfer the property once we receive the funds, so we don't have to go through that closing process. There are no closing fees associated with it. It'd be a very quick and easy transaction.
Thank you for explaining. Any questions from council? Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward, now's your chance. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Mayor, make a motion that council adopt the resolution to dispose of certain surplus right-of-way along McCoy Way and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Hypes and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel. Any discussion?
Do I need to put the dollar amount in the motion?
It's included in the resolution.
Thank you.
If we have no questions. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. And it's unanimous. Next item was also deferred. I just noticed that earlier. So PH-25-08 DRB Group, Charlotte Drive, change of condition. Oh, I did announce that one. I just didn't mark it off on my sheet. My apologies. So it looks like we have reached the end of the new business portion. So if there's any public comment that would like to come forward at this time, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we have any reports this evening? Councilman Hypes.
Thank you, Mayor. We've had some really exciting start of spring in downtown Alpharetta and elsewhere. We had recently the opening of the Spotlight stage at North Point Mall. It was a great opening event. Thanks to Judge Jamie Bendel for emceeing the ceremonies over there. We had just a great taste of Alpharetta, followed by a Town Green concert, followed by a Home by Dark concert over at Union Hill. And that's just looking in the rearview mirror. But what we have coming up is Thursday, May 22nd. We've got another food truck alley in downtown. On the May 23rd, Friday, we have a moonlight market that will take place the same time as the City Center concert on the Town Green. And then on Saturday, May 23rd, or Saturday and Sunday, I may have the dates wrong here, there's the Elite Jumping Horse Show at Wills Park. Saturday, May 24th and Sunday, May 25th, we got Alpharetta Street Fest from 10 to 5 p.m. at the Grove. And for those who aren't familiar, the Grove is the big grass green area behind the Alpharetta Community Center. And Monday, May 26th, is Memorial Day, so you can start the day in Brook Street Park with the Alpharetta Rotary Memorial Day Tribute. Great remembrance ceremony put on by the city and the Rotary Club for our residents. And that evening, the Alpharetta Symphony provides its free concert for Memorial Day in Brook Street Park. And on the same day, Memorial Day, Monday 26th, Wills Park Pool opens. And that's just a few of the things happening. Saturday. Wills Park? There's a typo in my notes. It opens Saturday. The Wills Park Pool, which is very exciting. So should be a great weekend coming up.
Councilman Mitchell.
Yeah, I just want to take a minute. If you watched the Georgia game on this past weekend, Zach Harris made the 2 strikeouts for the game, and I just want to recognize his mother for all the work she's done with him all these years, and congratulate her. So thank you.
Any other reports? So, rumor has it, Mr. Lagerbloom, that we do not require an executive session.
Rumor is correct tonight, yes.
Great. So all we need now is a motion to adjourn. I think Dorito beat him to it. Second by Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor, please raise your right hand for the last time. And it's unanimous.
Clerk has some things.